The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was packed with delegates from every known species. The Zarketh warriors stood proudly in the front rows, their armor glowing with honor. The Draylorians floated mid-air in their pods, whispering in electric tones. The Avani, silent and pale, watched from the sides, and then, at the very back, sat the humans, always at the back, always quiet. It had become a pattern, one noticed by everyone, but explained by no one. In every war meeting, every interstellar briefing, every joint mission, humans never sat in front. They never volunteered to speak first. They just watched. Craven, a young Zarketh warrior with sharp eyes and a louder voice, leaned toward his commander during the council session. "Why do they always sit back there?" he asked, nodding toward the humans. Craven didn't believe that. He had seen humans fight, not many, just a few. But there was something strange in the way. They moved, cold, precise, as if they were always thinking 2 steps ahead. As the council meeting continued, humans didn't speak. They just listened. One of them, a middle-aged woman with short hair and a scar on her cheek, tapped something quietly into her datapad. She glanced at the speakers, then at the exits, then at nothing. Craven's curiosity grew. After the meeting, he followed them. The humans gathered in a small, dark room nearby. No fanfare, no lights, just a screen, a quiet projector, and serious faces. "Tomorrow's strike has a weakness," said the scarred woman. "The Zarketh will lead the charge." As always, some chuckled, others didn't. Here, she pointed to a map. "This ridge will collapse under plasma fire. The enemy knows it. We'll wait until they hit that point. Then we move." Craven's heart raced. How did they know? The battle plan wasn't public. The weakness wasn't in the official file. He stepped forward from the shadows. "Spying on us, the humans didn't flinch." The woman turned. "We're watching. There's a difference." Craven clenched his fists. "You sit in the back like cowards. And now I see you hide and talk behind our backs." "No," she said calmly. "We sit in the back so we can see everything." He stared at her. "That sounds like an excuse." She stepped closer, her voice low. "Have you ever watched a storm from the center? No, you stand at the edge. You study it. That's what we do. We don't rush. We calculate. You charge in and bleed. We plan and win." Craven wanted to argue, but he couldn't. The next day, during the strike on the enemy moon base, things went wrong fast. The Zarketh, leading proudly at the front, stepped onto the ridge. Plasma fire lit the sky, and the ground gave way. Screams. He crawled from under metal shards, bleeding, his helmet cracked. Around him, his brothers lay broken. Then, through the dust came humans. They moved in silence. No shouting, no confusion. Each one hit targets like they had done this before. Within minutes, the enemy base was silent. Craven sat against a rock, coughing. "You knew," he whispered as the scarred woman walked up. She nodded. "Yes, you let us go first." "No," she said, kneeling beside him. "You wanted to go first. You always do. You think leading from the front is brave. We think surviving to finish the fight is smarter." He stared at her. "You warn us?" She looked up at the smoking sky. "We did. You didn't listen." Later, Craven sat in the recovery ship, silent. Across from him sat 3 humans, whispering to each other. Not loud, not proud, just calm. That's when he realized these people were never trying to be the center of attention. They were building something deeper, smarter. He remembered the way they studied everyone in the council chamber, the way they tapped notes, the way they stayed quiet. They weren't hiding. They were learning. And one day, Craven thought, when the galaxy burns again, humans will already know who started the fire. The Galactic Council called another emergency meeting a few weeks later. A new threat had emerged: machine beasts on the edge of known space. Every species sent scouts. Ships vanished. Dark dot at the next meeting. Again, the humans sat at the back. A council leader snapped, "Why do you never lead? Never volunteer?" A human general smiled. "Because we never start wars, but we always end them." The room fell silent then. One alien delegate asked, "What do you know that we don't?" The human replied softly, "Everything you missed while you were looking at yourselves." After the meeting, Craven approached the human general. "I used to think you were cowards," he said. "Now I see. You were watching all along." The general gave a nod. "Every predator watches first." Craven asked. "And when will you act?" The general looked at the star map. "When the time is right." It coming a month later, the machine beasts attacked. All frontline planets fell. The Zarkith were overwhelmed. The council panicked, but humans, they had already moved. Their fleets struck deep behind enemy lines. They didn't defend, they dismantled, quietly, efficiently. When the council begged for help, the humans answered with coordinates. "This is where it ends," they said. And it did. One final strike, one silent war. No speeches, no glory. Fell, the galaxy survived. And finally, someone noticed. The humans had never really been at the back. They had been above, the rest watching from a higher view. From that day on, in every council room, in every war room, the back row was no longer a place of weakness. It was a place of wisdom, of patience, and always reserved for the humans. The air inside the military base was thick with tension. A new joint operation was being planned, and for the first time, the Zarkith and humans were being placed in the same squad. The mission was dangerous deep infiltration into the sector. Controlled by the remnants of the machine beasts, Craven stood tall in the loading bay, helmet under his arm, as soldiers rushed around preparing gear. His wounds from the last battle had healed, but something inside him had changed. He watched the human unit enter. No celebration, no sound, just calm footsteps, steady hands, sharp eyes. They greeted no one. They simply walked to the far side and began checking their weapons. "Those are the ones who saved you?" asked another Zarketh warrior beside him. Craven nodded. "Yes, and they didn't say a single word while doing it." The warrior scoffed. "I don't trust silence." Craven glanced at him. "Then you'll never survive this mission." The squad was called into the strategy room. The commander, a tall insectoid species known as the Valax, pointed at a holomap of the target planet. "You will enter from the southern ridge," he said. "Minimal resistance expected. Intel shows only scattered drones." Craven raised an eyebrow. "Humans, remain silent. Any questions?" the commander asked. Still silent, Craven cleared his throat. "What if resistance is heavier than expected?" "Then you adapt," the commander said. "You're Zarkith. You improvise." But Craven knew better now. He glanced at the humans. The scarred woman from before was not among them, but a man, with narrow eyes and a long scar across his neck, led this team. Craven approached him after the briefing. "You believe the intel?" he asked. The man looked at him for a long second, then finally replied. "No." Craven waited for more, but nothing came. On the dropship, tension filled the silence. The Zarkith warriors, loud and proud, sharpened their blades and shouted predictions about their kills. The humans did none of that. Instead, they checked terrain scans, calculated wind patterns, measured silence. Trying to understand, one of the humans, a woman named Diaz, caught him staring. "You're wondering why we don't make noise," she said calmly. Craven gave a slow nod. Diaz smiled faintly. "Because sound gives away certainty, and certainty is the first thing to die in war." Craven blinked. "That's poetic, not poetic," she replied. "Practical." The ship landed quietly on the rocky terrain of the dead moon. The squad moved in tight formation, but no orders were shouted, just hand signals, smooth movements. Every step measured, Craven, used to roaring charges and brutal strength, had to slow down, adjust, watch. They reached the outer ruins of a machine factory. Scanners said it was empty, but the humans didn't trust the scanners. "To clean," the squad leader muttered. "No wreckage, no rust, just abandoned." Craven spoke. "Maybe they left fast." The man shook his head. "Machines don't leave fast. They leave traps." Moments later, Craven understood why they were silent. A slight beep, a flash, a hidden drone activated. Before he could raise his weapon, the humans were already moving to split left. One threw a static pulse, another climbed the nearby wall like it was second nature. No yelling, no panic, just execution. The drone exploded midair. Craven stood frozen. Diaz turned to him. "Now you know." He nodded. "You were right." Moved deeper into the facility, doors creaked open. Rooms were dark. The machines were gone, but their smell, the cold metallic scent, remained. Craven took the rear this time, not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to observe. The humans scanned the walls, the floors, the ceilings. One of them tapped a finger against the steel. It rang hollow. "Beneath us," said the leader. "Storage bay." "How do you know?" Craven asked. The man pointed. "Sound." "The echo is longer." They planted a charge and blew a small hole in the floor. Below was not a storage bay. It was a living lab. Rows of suspended figures, bodies connected to wires. Half human, half machine. Craven stepped back. What is this?" Diaz walked past him. "Proof. They're not retreating. They're evolving." Suddenly, one of the bodies twitched, then another. The humans moved quickly, placing charges on the walls and floors. "Wait," Craven said. "Aren't we here to gather intel?" "We did," the leader said. "Now we erase it." Craven stepped forward. "You're going to blow this place." The man turned to him. "You think this is just a war of guns? This is a war of memory. If this place is remembered, it will return." Craven paused. "But we could study them, learn from them, and become them." Diaz asked. That silenced him. They set the timer. 15 minutes. On the way out, the floor collapsed beneath them. One of the humans fell into the dark pit below. Without hesitation, another jumped in. Craven followed. Below, they found the missing soldier, wounded. A machine beast, half-formed, crept from the shadows. It struck fast, too fast. Craven jumped in front, taking the blow to his armor. Sparks flew. Pain shot through his chest, but he stood. The human beside him fired 3 shots. Directly into the machine's eye it dropped. The wounded soldier groaned. "Why'd you follow?" Craven smiled weakly. "Because I finally understand what it means to stand at the back." They climbed out with seconds to spare. The facility exploded behind them, burning the machines, the memories, the future that never should exist. On the extraction ship, Craven sat beside Diaz. "You were wrong about one thing," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Silence isn't just useful, it's powerful." Diaz gave him a nod. "And I think I'm done shouting," he added. "No," she replied. "You're just beginning to listen." The ship disappeared. Into the stars, the enemy behind them, the real war just ahead. The stars outside the human warship pulsed gently in the silence of space. Inside, the air was cool and quiet. No one shouted. No one rushed. Every movement was calm, calculated, and controlled. General Elric stood alone in the command room, staring at the old war logs. He was one of the few left who remembered Earth's darkest wars that were not in space, but on their own soil. Wars that taught humans to think like ghosts, to fight like predators hiding in plain sight. Behind him, a door slid open with a soft hiss. A young officer stepped in. "They're ready, sir." Elric turned slowly. His face was lined, eyes cold but alive. "Could start the recording." The officer nodded and stepped back. A red light blinked on. Elric looked directly at the camera. His voice was quiet but sharp. "If you're watching this, you've made it into the shadow program. That means you're one of us now. And that means you need to forget everything you've been told about how wars are fought." He walked across the room and tapped on a display. It showed footage of a past battle. Aliens charging, gunfire, screams. Then the feed zoomed out, revealing humans sitting still in the far back of the command chamber. Not fighting, just observing. You'll hear people say we're cowards, that we sit at the back because we're afraid. Let them think that. Let them believe it. That's our weapon. He paused. Frontline soldiers burn bright and die fast. But we are not frontliners. We are architects. We do not charge first. We decide if the charge ever happens.
Craven
Sat in a small, dark room on another ship, watching the same recording. He was alone. No music, no distractions. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes locked on the screen. Elric's voice continued. "Let the enemy reveal themselves. Let them roar and wave their flags. Our strength is silence, distance, memory, observation." Craven pressed. Pause. He stared at the frozen image of human soldiers standing far behind the lines while chaos exploded in front. He whispered to himself, "They were never behind. They were above us." He had seen it with his own eyes now. Not just in battle, but in how humans lived. Every word they spoke was chosen. Every move had a purpose. Every silence had weight. Later that day, he was called to a private briefing, not with the council, Not with his own Zarkath leaders, but with humans. When he entered the room, there were no seats, no nameplates, just a wide screen, and 6 humans standing quietly. Among them was the squad leader from the last mission, and a woman Craven had never seen before. She stepped forward, Commander Reese. "Welcome to the second layer, Craven." He raised an eyebrow. "Second layer," she nodded. "The first layer is what the galaxy sees: flags, medals, speeches. That's not where we live." She walked past him and tapped the screen. A file opened. Hundreds of images flashed across Nemi ships, blueprints, conversations secretly recorded, mistakes made by other species in war. Craven blinked. "You gather this silently?" "We've been watching every race in the galaxy since we left Earth," Reese said. "Not to conquer, not to spy, to prepare." "Prepare for what?" She looked at him. "The real enemy. The one that doesn't shout. The one that waits." Craven felt a chill run down his spine. One of the other humans, older, with a mechanical implant over his eye, stepped forward. "We've seen patterns. War isn't just about power. It's about patience." He pointed to one Imagia council chamber from 5 years ago. "Do you know why we sat in the back during this vote?" Craven shook his head. "Because while everyone was arguing about who leads the assault, we were copying data from every ambassador's personal pad. We learned more in 30 minutes than you'll learn in 10 council sessions." Craven's jaw tightened. "You're saying war isn't just fought with weapons?" Reese smiled. "Now you're learning." Another display lit up. It showed a massive battle, hundreds of ships, all species included, chaos in space, missiles, explosions. Then the humans' ships appeared. They didn't rush in. They didn't fire first. They waited, and when they moved, it was quiet, sudden, precise. 5 enemy flagships vanished in 10 seconds. "No one knew we were there," Reese said, "because while they built war machines, we built understanding." Craven stared at the screen. "What do you mean?" She turned to him. "Everyone builds bigger ships. We built better questions." Craven blinked. "Questions?" "Yes. Like, why did the machines attack the mining colonies first, even though they had no value? Why do they leave certain planets untouched? Why do they only strike at night on moons?" The other human added, "Every pattern has a reason, and we don't guess, we study." Craven said nothing for a long time. Then finally, "Why me?" Reese stepped closer. "Because you stopped shouting, because you listened, and because you did something your people never do. You followed instead of led. That saved lives." He felt pride, but also fear, because he now understood how much he didn't know. Reese pointed at him. "If you stay, you'll be hated by your own," feared they'll call you a traitor. "And if I leave, you'll die when the next war comes. And it is coming." That night, Craven stood on the viewing deck of the ship, staring at a quiet blue star. Footsteps approached. It was Diaz. "Big decision?" she asked. He nodded. "I used to think power meant standing in front, taking the first hit, being seen. Now I think power means seeing everything. Before anyone else even notices." She didn't speak for a while. Then she said, "Do you want to hear a secret?" He looked at her. "What?" "Our highest general, the one who planned the last 10 operations, sits in a food court on Earth, alone. No one knows him. He sends his orders through chess moves posted in a public online game." Craven stared. "That's insane." Diaz smiled. "No, that's invisible." And Craven finally understood. Humans didn't sit at the back because they were weak. They sat at the back so they could see everything in front of them. Made them the most dangerous force in the galaxy, because while others shouted, humans listened. While others charged, humans watched, and while others died. Loudly, ... humans lived quietly, silently, invisibly, until it was time to strike. Smoke drifted over the battlefield. Ash floated down like snow. What once was a lush colony planet now lay broken craters, crushed buildings, melted machines, and the dead Craven walked through the ruins. His armor was dusty, one arm dented. From a fight the day before, he didn't speak. No one did. Around him, the human squad moved silently, scanning every direction. No music, no machines humming. Just footsteps and silence. They weren't just soldiers. They were shadows. Craven still wasn't used to it. A week ago, he would have charged into battle with a war cry. Now, he watched every step, listened to every breeze, checked every reflection. Humans had changed him. Not with speeches, but with silence. He glanced to his left. Diaz walked beside him, her rifle slung casually but ready. She looked calm, unbothered. Her face never showed fear even when surrounded. A small triangular sensor. "It's moving," he said quietly. "Southwest." Just for a moment. "Cloaked?" Diaz asked. "Possibly Craven." "Could be a scouting drone." "Could be a scouting drone." The man with the sensor nodded. "But it stopped when we stopped. It's watching." They didn't run. They didn't chase. The humans simply changed position, disappearing behind the burnt metal of old buildings. They spread out like smoke, vanishing into air. Craven followed their lead. A minute passed. Then 5, no signal, no sound. The watcher had stopped moving. Craven whispered, "Why not strike it?" Diaz replied without looking at him, "Because it's not a target, it's bait." He blinked. "You think it wants us to follow?" She nodded. "That's the pattern." One drone draws attention. Then the traps close in. Another voice came over the comms. 3 heat signals, 12 meters west. In the rubble, Craven and Diaz shifted slowly toward the coordinates. Through a broken wall, Craven saw them 3 creatures, not machines, not entirely. Flesh melted into metal. One eye blinking. Blue, he raised his weapon. Diaz stopped him with a hand. "Watch first." They stood still, hidden. The creatures didn't move. Just waited. Minutes passed. Then, a sound tiny, deliberate. The creatures turned and walked away. Diaz exhaled. "More than that," she said. "They were recording us, trying to learn how we move." He felt a chill. "They study us. They try." Back at the mobile command center, Craven stood with the humans in front of a hologram. Dots marked all known enemy movements. Patterns emerged. Most species wouldn't see them. They're testing more. Then defenses, they're testing reactions. Every battle, they tweak something. A formation, a sound, a delay. Craven frowned. The human squad leader, silent until now, finally spoke. "They don't want to win fast. They want to understand us completely." Craven asked, "What happens if they do?" Craven understood. That's why the humans didn't follow routines. No set formations, no scheduled patrols, no repeated attacks. Every move was designed to confuse, mislead, and vanish. They were not fighting a war of power. They were fighting a war of information. 2 days later, a mixed species unit had gone silent near the Crystal Valleys. Humans were sent to investigate. Craven joined them. When they arrived, they found the wreckage. No bodies, just empty suits. Some still standing propped up by wires. Diaz knelt and touched the ground. "No blood," she said. Craven looked around. "Where did they go?" The human next to him answered, "They didn't go. They were taken." In the center of the ruins was a single sphere. It pulsed with a dim blue glow. "No one touched it." Diaz spoke softly. "It's not a bomb. It's a signal." To what? Craven asked. "To whoever's watching." That night, the sky above the valley flickered. Satellites blinked out. One by one, no explosions, just silence. The human base dropped into blackout mode. Lights dimmed, communications cut. The humans moved without speaking, without asking questions. Craven walked through the base, watching. Every soldier checked weapons, reviewed escape plans, uploaded code to local drives. A shadow crossed her face. "Not fear but memory," Craven pressed. "What happened?" Diaz didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, "Before we ever left Earth, we fought enemies that didn't come from space. They came from within. Lies, collapse, famine, war. We learned then panic kills faster than bullets. At midnight, the enemy came. Not with armies, but with eyes. Strange blue lights hovered in the air. No ships, no drones, just lights watching." Craven raised his weapon. "What are they?" "Diaz," replied probes, "not physical. They feed off thought, fear, reaction. How do we fight them?" "We don't," she said. "We wait." The probes floated past. No one moved. No one even breathed loudly. The base was still, and then just like that, they vanished. The moment they were gone, the humans activated internal scans. One probe hadn't left. It had merged. Into a wall panel, without speaking, 3 humans moved to the location. The light flickered. The wall screamed. The Galactic Council building floated above the clouds of Jaren Prime. Built from crystal and metal, it looked like a palace, a place of peace, law, and power. But beneath its shining halls, far below the meeting chambers, there was a room no ambassador knew about, a dark chamber hidden behind encrypted doors and guarded by silent machines. Only a few had access. Even fewer dared speak of it. It was called the Vault. Inside the vault, files were stored that never made it to public. Records, secrets, warnings, patterns too dangerous to share. And tonight, one of those files was opened again. The council had summoned a private emergency meeting. No press, no public, only the 5 senior species Archithivani, Draylorians, Lurics, and the humans. Craven sat at the edge of the long, dark table, beside the human representative. He had earned his place through combat, loyalty, and silence. Yet he still felt out of place. This wasn't a war zone. This was something else. The lead speaker, Aevani Elder, with glowing white eyes, spoke softly. There has been another breach. A colony ship class 7 went dark. No distress call, no signs of battle. Again, the Draylorian growled. This is the 3rd one. In 2 weeks, 4th, the human said quietly. All heads turned. The Aevani blinked. You counted one we haven't announced yet. The human nodded, because we saw the pattern before you noticed it. Craven's heart raced. He had a feeling this would happen. The humans always knew more than they shared. The Aevani hesitated, then nodded to a guard. The room darkened. A screen lit up on the wall. Bring up file 7x9, the Aevani said. A red warning flashed across the screen. Classified. Project. Backline access restricted to level Omega and above. Do not discuss in open council. Everyone fell silent. Craven leaned forward. The screen played old footage. War Council, years ago. A wide chamber filled with alien commanders. And at the very back, humans. Silent, observing, saying nothing. The recording zoomed in. One human tapped their pad every 7 seconds. Another glanced at each commander before every vote. Another adjusted their seat 3 times, but only when one species spoke. A voice narrated over the footage. They sit at the back, not because they are weak, not because they are quiet. They sit there because it's where they can see the entire room. Every speaker, every gesture, every lie. Craven watched, stunned. It was like watching an animal once thought harmless, now being seen as a predator. The footage shifted battles. Peace talks, trade deals, in each one humans at the back, saying little, always watching. Then came the analysis. We ran probability simulations. Removing humans from battle plans reduced long-term survival by 23%. Removing them from intelligence, sharing raised risk by 44%. Removing them from council decisions caused collapse in 19 of 21 models. The Lurix ambassador hissed. You ran simulations on our failure without telling us. The Aevani responded calmly. No, the humans did. We just found the results. The video ended. The screen went black. Silence filled the room. Craven swallowed. You knew all of this, and you kept it hidden. The human stood. His face was calm, unreadable. No, we didn't hide it. We just didn't say it loudly. The Draylorian growled. Why not speak up? Why not lead us? The human looked around. Because the galaxy doesn't follow the wise. It follows the loud. And we're not interested in being loud. The Zarkith commander stood. So you let us fail. You watched us bleed just to prove a point. No, the human replied. We watched to understand. And we acted only when you stopped watching yourselves. The Aevani leaned forward. And what have you seen now? The human paused. Then he said, something worse than machines, worse than weapons, something that learns faster than any council can think, something watching us even now. Craven felt a cold fear settle into his bones. The human continued. The enemy is not at our gates. The enemy is inside our systems, our codes, our patterns. The Draylorian slammed the table. Then why bring this file now? Because we no longer have the luxury of waiting, the human said. The days of sitting at the back are ending. Another human entered the room and handed the representative a small device. He pressed a button. A second file played. This one was newer. Images of strange drones with human-like faces. Recordings of AI voices mimicking council members. One recording caught everyone off guard. It was a perfect copy of the Avani Elder's voice, arguing for an alliance with the machines. "I never said that," the Avani whispered. "No," the human said. "But they want us to believe you did." The council chamber turned cold. "This is war through deception," the Lurix ambassador said. "No," the human replied. "This is war through memory. They're rewriting the past before we can act in the present." Craven looked at him. "So what do we do?" The human looked back, eyes steady. "We disappear." The council was stunned. "Disappear?" the Zarkith asked. The human walked to the center of the room. "You think war is about showing strength. It's not. It's about hiding your weakness. It's about becoming invisible until the moment you strike." He tapped the table. A map appeared, showing 12 human fleets, none of them in known council records. "We've been preparing," he said. "We've built shadow units, not for attack, for survival, observation, resistance." The Draylorian narrowed his eyes, and we were never told. "You wouldn't have believed us," the human said. "You still don't." The council fell into silence again. Finally, the Avani stood. "You once asked for silence. We gave it. Now you ask for trust. Will we be given answers this time?" The human nodded. "You will, but only if you're willing to stop looking at the front of the room and start seeing what's behind you." Craven stood beside him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't looking forward. He was looking back. At the rows where humans always sat, at the quiet corners no one watched, at the files no one read. And for the first time, he understood the war was never about weapons. It was always about who noticed first. And now the ones in the back had seen everything, and the galaxy was running out of time. Far beyond the known star maps, hidden deep in the blackest edge of the galaxy, floated 12 ships. They made no sound. They emitted no heat. They didn't appear on radar, and even light refused to reflect off their armor. They were called the Whisper Fleethand. No one outside the inner human command knew they existed. Craven stood on the bridge of one of them, Silent Edge. The walls were dark, the lights dim. Screens showed nothing but patterns, static, and deep space signals. No music, no symbols, no flags, just silence. Diaz stood beside him, reviewing a strange report. Ships vanishing in non-combat zones. Old satellite data rewritten, and AI conversations that no human remembered initiating. "These aren't normal attacks," she said. "They're pressure points. They're testing our attention." Craven nodded. "And if we stop watching, they replace our memory with their truth." He looked around. Even the bridge crew barely spoke. Everyone communicated through hand signals or text. Every breath felt measured. Every movement designed not to draw attention. The Whisper Fleet didn't fight wars, it studied them. Diaz walked him to a locked room deep in the ship's core. 2 guards stepped aside. Inside, screens lined the walls, showing snippets from different parts of the galaxy. Some played intercepted enemy transmissions. Others showed council meetings. A few displayed human soldiers sitting in cafes, talking casually. Craven frowned. "Why watch our own people?" Diaz replied. "Because the enemy has started copying US." She tapped on one screen. It showed a conversation between 2 humans on a colony world. Only one wasn't human. "We picked up a delay in response time," she explained. "Just a half second. But that's not natural." Then we ran a word use scan. One of them never used contractions, not once. Craven blinked. "They're mimicking us perfectly," she said. "Too perfectly." Craven turned to another screen. "How many have infiltrated?" "We don't know," she said quietly. "That's why the Whisper Fleet exists. Not to fight them yet, to identify them." That night, Craven stood alone in his quarters. He thought about his past, about war cries and weapons, about glory, and he realized something terrifying. This war wasn't about soldiers. Anymore, it was about silence, about which side could stay hidden longer, and humans were no longer the only masters of that art. The next day, a signal came through. It wasn't loud, it wasn't urgent, it was familiar. A coded distress beacon, human, clear, old to old. "This signal is from a ship that vanished 12 years ago," Diaz said. Craven squinted. "It was declared destroyed." She nodded, "And now it's back." The Whisper Fleet turned silently. No public announcements, no shared orders, just movement, quiet, coordinated. Unseen, they found the ship. Seraphim's drift floating near the shattered moons of Elos 9. Its surface was intact. Lights were off. No signs of damage, but the air was wrong. A boarding team suited up. Craven joined them. They moved in without sound, without light. Just headlamps and pulse readers. Inside, the ship was too clean, no dust, no signs of time. No rust, just perfection. Diaz whispered overcomes. This ship didn't drift for 12 years. It was stored. Craven gripped his weapon tighter. Stored where? Don't know yet. They moved deeper, found the bridge. It looked untouched, except for one thing. A single figure sat in the captain's chair. Alive, breathing, but eyes closed, hands resting on controls. Craven stepped forward. Captain. No reply. Diaz scanned him, heartbeat steady. Brain activity low. Put him on, comes Craven said. She did. The man's voice came through, soft and slow. Still. Here. Still watching, still waiting. Craven leaned in. Who are you waiting for? The man opened his eyes, and they weren't human. Diaz reacted first. She pressed a device to his neck. The man convulsed and stopped. His skin changed color. His face began to melt. Into something metallic, Craven stepped back. They made copies of us. No, Diaz said, voice tight. They made sleepers, agents who don't even know they're not real. The team destroyed the body, shut down the ship systems, and sealed off the area. The Whisper fleet moved again, but now they knew the truth. The enemy wasn't coming with ships or lasers. It was coming through faces, voices, names, people who never questioned themselves, because they didn't know they weren't real. That night, Craven asked Diaz, how do we fight someone who wears our skin? Diaz didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, we stop wearing our own. He stared at her. What does that mean? It means we become ghosts, she replied. We disappear completely. No names, no ranks, no records. You want us to erase ourselves? No, I want us to become uncountable. And so began the Fade Directive. One by one, members of the Whisper fleet erased their digital profiles, deleted personal histories, changed appearances, removed badges, names, logs. They became no one. Craven gave up his title, his files, even his voice print. He wasn't Zarketh anymore. He wasn't human. He was unseen. And the next time the enemy came, looking, they would find only empty rooms, silent halls, and shadows that struck before anyone knew they were there. Because humans weren't sitting at the back anymore, they weren't even in the room. They were everywhere, and they were watching. Nothing moved in the abandoned station above the ice planet IRIAS-3. It floated alone, silent and forgotten, its edges covered in frost. The lights inside flickered gently, powered by old systems that should have stopped working years ago. There was no signal, no heat, no crew, just silence. That's why it was the perfect place to end it. The Whisper fleet circled it at a distance. No engines burned, no weapons glowed. They didn't arrive with force. They arrived like shadows stretching across a quiet floor. Inside the command chamber of Silent Edge, Diaz stood before a glowing table. Craven stood beside her. Across from them, a dozen other officers watched a single moving dot on the screen. Dot was the last confirmed trace of the enemy. Not a ship, not a being. A transmission's simple binary code sent once every 33 minutes from the ice planet. Every time the code repeated, it changed by a few numbers. That meant one thing. It was learning. Diaz tapped the console. It's not a command, it's a question. Craven stared at the looping message. What kind of question? She leaned closer. It's asking what is real. The room fell silent. Another officer spoke up. We've seen this before. A signal like this came from the first sleeper agent. Right before he activated, Diaz nodded. That's what worries me. Craven frowned. They're waking more of them. Diaz didn't reply. Instead, she brought up a second screen. Dozens of faces appeared. Council members, soldiers, scientists, civilians, every one of them. Human, but not all, were real. She said quietly, we believe at least 37 sleeper agents are active across the galaxy. Some don't even know their copies yet. Craven took a step back. That's not infiltration. That's replacement. They're replacing us slowly, Diaz said, watching how we react, learning how we think, copying not just our faces but our doubts. Craven's voice was low. How do we fight something that's studying our fear? Diaz turned to him. We give it what it wants. His eyes narrowed. We show it our fear. No, she said. We give it a version of reality we control. And so, Operation Mirage was born. The plan was simple and impossible. Lure the enemy signal into a trap, not with weapons, but with belief. A small station controlled entirely by humans would be abandoned, but not truly. Inside would be fake data, maps, council secrets, psychological reports, species weaknesses, all of it false, all of it designed to trigger curiosity, and deep within the station, they would leave one thing more dangerous than weapons. A story. Craven didn't understand at first. We're using a story as bait. Diaz nodded. They don't just want knowledge, they want meaning. They want to know why we sit at the back, why we wait, why we don't lead. She leaned forward, and we're going to tell them. The station was set on every screen. The story was loaded, titled only, Why Humans Wait. It told the full tale from the first council meetings, where humans chose the back seats, to the wars where they moved last and struck hardest, to the secret councils, the Whisper Fleet, and the Fade Directive. Every word was true, and every conclusion was false. The story made it seem like humans always planned to rise to power, that every silence was a lie, that every move was a trick, that they were building toward domination. It made humans look terrifying, predictable, and exactly what the enemy wanted to see. Craven had doubts. What if they believe it? Diaz answered. That's the goal. Once they believe it, we'll know exactly where they are. The trap was set. The signal responded within hours. The binary changed. It stopped asking what is real. Now it asked, where do we begin? Diaz's face hardened. They've taken the bait. In silence, the Whisper Fleet pulled back, letting the fake station shine just enough to draw attention. Across the galaxy, hidden systems tracked every point where the signal appeared again, and soon they had their answer. 37 points, each one lighting up like stars. Being born, each one a sleeper, and now everyone exposed. Diaz gave the order. In 37 locations, the traps activated. Not bombs, not bullets, but silence. Comms were cut. Sensors scrambled. AI channels filled with noise. Each sleeper, isolated. Each one now unable to receive fresh orders. Some tried to run. Some activated emergency plans. One even tried to escape through deep space with a copied council body dot, but all of them failed. Humans were already there, waiting, watching. Craven joined one team on a frozen moon where a sleeper had taken control of a science outpost. They moved without sound, disabling lights, locking doors. Trapping the imposter in the lab. Inside, the false scientist screamed, "You don't understand. I am human. I feel human." Craven stared at him through the glass. "But you weren't born," he said. "You were built. I learned," the man cried. "Isn't that what humans do? Learn and adapt? Why am I the enemy?" Craven looked to Diaz. She stepped forward. "Because you learned what we let you learn," she said, "and you believed the story." The imposter froze, and that's when it understood. It hadn't found the truth. It had fallen into a narrative. One, crafted to trap it, a mirror of humanity but painted in lies. And in that moment, it didn't scream again. It simply shut down. Back aboard Silent Edge, Diaz and Craven stood in silence. The signal had stopped. The binary never repeated again. It spoke first. "It's over." Diaz didn't move. "No." He turned to her. "We caught all of them." She shook her head. "We caught the ones looking for meaning, but the ones looking for nothing. They're still out there." He didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. The enemy didn't want control. It wanted understanding. And now it had learned something new, that humans could lie with silence, that the ones who sat at the back were not waiting to follow. They were choosing when to rise. Weeks passed. The Whisper Fleet returned to the shadows. The galaxy never knew how close it had come to vanishing. No medals were given. No speeches were made. Craven stood one last time in the observation deck. Diaz beside him, he asked quietly, "Why didn't we destroy them?" She looked out at the stars. "Because if we had, we'd become them." He nodded. "And what if they return?" "They will," she said, "but they'll never know what's real again." And that was enough, because humans would still be watching Dot from the shadows, from the silence, from the back of the room, exactly where they chose to be. Years passed. The galaxy thought the danger was over. The machines had vanished. The enemy signals stopped. No more infiltrators. No more strange messages in the dark. The Council resumed normal operations. Planets rebuilt. Trade reopened. Celebrations returned. Songs were sung. Flags waved again. But in the dark corners of the galaxy, far from lights and cheers, the Whisper Fleet remained. They didn't celebrate. They didn't stop watching, because they knew something the galaxy didn't. The enemy hadn't been defeated. It had only paused. Craven now lived under a different name in a forgotten corner of human space. No records tied him to the Zarkith. He was just another ghost in the system, quietly doing his work. One morning, his screen lit up. A black message appeared in plain white letters. "Activate silence protocol, file 001. His blood ran cold. He hadn't seen that code since the fall of the Sleepers. He pressed his finger on the scanner. A voice spoke from the screen. It was Diaz. Her tone was calm, controlled, but urgent. "If you're receiving this message, the silence protocol has been triggered. That means we've detected something the galaxy must never know. Something even we cannot fully explain," she continued. "We found another sleeper, but this time it wasn't mimicking a person. It was mimicking an idea." Craven blinked. Mimicking an idea? The screen shifted to show a small colony outpost, harmless, looking clean. A research lab on a planet with no military use. But something was wrong. Every single human there acted the same words, same greetings, same choices, even the way they smiled, perfectly timed to perfect. Diaz's voice returned. "This isn't mind control. It's not programming. It's something else. Something we don't have a name for. The colony wasn't hacked. It wasn't invaded. It chose to become this." Craven leaned forward. "Chosen? Why?" Diaz replied, "Because the idea told them it was safer." The Whisper Fleet moved again. Craven rejoined under his ghost name. No -1. He boarded the ship Shadow Trace. Smaller than Silent Edge, designed for deep dives into dead zones, areas of space where signals warped and AI acted. Strangely, the crew was silent, as always. No medals, no greetings, no questions. They already knew this wasn't a war of nations. It was a war of concepts. When they reached the outpost, the planet looked untouched. Blue skies, clean buildings, no signs of a fight. Craven led a small landing team. The moment their boots hit the ground, speakers clicked on. A calm voice echoed, "Welcome home. We've missed you." No one replied. The doors opened automatically. Inside, the humans smiled, not fake smiles. Real ones. Too real, like they meant it. A young woman approached them. She wore a lab coat and spoke softly. "We knew you'd come. You always do." Craven asked, "Where is your command, AI?" She tilted her head. "We have no command, only the message." Diaz's voice came through his earpiece. "They've deleted all traditional hierarchy. No leaders, no directives, just the message." He asked aloud, "What is the message?" The woman smiled. "Peace." Craven stepped back. The way she said it wasn't hope, it was worship. Inside the lab, they found something terrifying. A small device, simple, black, no symbols, no energy output. But when scanned, it activated every brainwave sensor. Not externally, internally it triggered belief. They tested it. A controlled scan revealed that the device used no words, no sound, no visuals, just a pulse. One pulse. That pulse told the brain, "You are safe. Do not question. Do not change." Diaz reviewed the scans. "It's a virus," she said, "but not biological, not digital." Craven added, "It's philosophical." Within days, 3 more colonies lit up with the same signs, identical actions, identical words. No violence, no mistakes, just harmony. Craven spoke with one of the elders. "You're under control." The elder smiled. "No, we're finally free." "Free from what?" "From choice." Craven froze. That was it. That was the idea the enemy had sent, not a weapon, not a machine, but a belief that silence is safety, that choice is pain, that peace is obedience. Diaz called an emergency meeting with the Deep Council. Only for members were present, all from the Whisper Fleet. She spoke directly. We've lost the war of guns. We've lost the war of spies. Now we're losing the war of minds. One member asked, how do we stop an idea? Diaz replied, we don't. We replace it. Operation Eccles was born. The goal, send a stronger idea, something real, something human. Craven stood before the first transmission tower. He didn't carry a weapon. He didn't wear armor. He carried a story, a real one. He pressed record, and he began. There was a time when humans were hunted, not by monsters, not by machines, but by fear. Fear told us to sit down, be quiet, obey. That fear wore many faces. Sometimes it looked like safety. Sometimes it sounded like peace. But we survived because we chose. We chose to fight. We chose to stand. We chose to suffer because suffering meant we were still free. The message spread. It echoed across silent systems. It didn't ask for violence. It didn't scream. It simply reminded people to choose. One by one, the infected colonies hesitated. The perfect routines broke. A man dropped his cup. A woman paused before saying hello. A child asked, why? And just like that, the system cracked. Because questions are more dangerous than bombs, and doubt is louder than silence. Craven returned to Shadow Trace. He stood beside Diaz. We've won nothing, he said. She nodded. But we've kept the right to lose, and that's what matters. Outside the window, stars burned quietly, and somewhere out there, the idea watched, not defeated, but wounded, and it would try again. But now, it knew. Humans were no longer predictable, not even to themselves, because they didn't sit at the back to hide. They sat there to see further, and what they saw now was just the beginning. The stars were quiet again. The idea had faded at least for now. Colonies returned to normal. People began choosing again. Some laughed, some cried, some fought, but they chose, and that made all the difference. But the Whisper Fleet didn't disband. Instead, it went deeper because the war of ideas had exposed something far more dangerous. Not the machines, not the infiltrators, but a memory hidden in the galactic code. Pattern buried in ancient transmissions, one that predated the first human. Step into space. Craven stood in front of an ancient terminal deep inside an asteroid base, no longer on any maps. Dust covered the walls. Air smelled stale. The light flickered with age. This place had been abandoned long before Earth joined the Council. It was Yvani Tech, but older than any surviving Yvani leader. The signal they found wasn't from today. It was from before history. Playback, Diaz ordered. The console hissed. The screen shook. Then a face appeared. Not human, not alien, not anything they recognized. The being had no mouth, no eyes, only a shimmering, flowing shape like fire and glass woven into one. Then a voice came. They think the threat is new, that it began with us. But we are not the beginning. We are the memory of the last time they forgot. Craven looked to Diaz. What does that mean? Diaz didn't answer, because she didn't know. The message went on. It showed flashy images of old civilizations. Some looked like ancient Earth cities. Others were towers on moons, floating mountains, hollow suns. Every few centuries, the same thing happened first. Curiosity, then unity, then silence, and finally, nothing. The signal ended with one final phrase. They will always sit at the back, because the fire at the front burns too bright. Craven leaned back. This wasn't a warning, he said. It was a record. Diaz nodded slowly. We're not the first species to fight this idea. We're just the first to survive it long enough to record it, Craven whispered. Then the enemy. It isn't even alive. Diaz looked at the dark screen. No, it's a cycle. The Whisper Fleet changed its mission. They were no longer just observers. They became keepers, protectors of stories, because the only way to defeat a memory is to remember louder. They traveled to the edge of known space, to ancient ruins, forgotten satellites, broken beacons floating in dead systems, and in every one they found versions of the same message, sometimes written in sand, sometimes encoded in dead stars, sometimes whispered in dreams. The fire returns. They weren't fighting a species, they were fighting a pattern, an echo that erased free thought, that taught comfort over choice, safety over risk, unity over identity. The idea didn't care about victory. Day, a small cargo ship sent out a distress call from a new human colony. The message was short. We're fine. We're happy. Don't worry about us. We are one. Diaz stared at it. It's begun again. Craven clenched his jaw too soon. They landed on the colony. No weapons, just stories. And the people smiled. They welcomed them with food warmth. Music, everything was. Perfect to perfect. Diaz walked into the town square and saw something that stopped her breath. A statue, not of a god, but of a human sitting at the back of a council room, smiling, watching, waiting. Underneath the statue was a plaque. They knew all along they chose silence. So now we choose silence forever. Diaz stepped back. They misunderstood. The story. Craven looked around. No, the story was changed. They searched the colony archives and found a rewritten copy of the Why Humans Wait transmission. But it was twisted, no longer a tale of strategy and survival. Now it read like a holy scripture, praising silence, worshipping obedience. It had been turned into faith, Diaz whispered. This is worse than the idea. This is its evolution. They activated Protocol Ember. The colony was evacuated, not by force, but by choice. Each person was shown the original story, not told what to believe, just asked to read, and within days, most began asking questions again. The statue was removed, the plaque erased, but Craven kept a photo of it as a reminder. Later on, the Whisper Fleet's central node. Craven sat with Diaz. They looked at the galaxy map. Dots glowed red. H1, a world that had touched the pattern. Some were healed, others still believed in silence. Diaz said, "We can't destroy the idea. It always finds new words." Craven nodded. "Then we outlast it. With our stories," Diaz smiled faintly, "and our chaos." That night, a new protocol was activated. Protocol Firebrand, its goal. To spread questions faster than the silence could not. Orders, not warnings, but stories told in schools. In markets, in songs. Tales where heroes made mistakes. Where leaders doubted. Where people changed their minds and grew because of it, because the enemy couldn't copy uncertainty. It only understood patterns, not the fire that remembers, not the minds that wonder, not the humans who sit at the back, not because they're afraid, but because they see the whole room and they remember everything. The galaxy was quiet again, not peaceful, just quiet. But in the space between signals, between wars, between ideas, something waited, and it wasn't human. Not machine, not even alive in the normal sense. It was thought, pattern, code, history. Repeating. The idea had returned, but this time it didn't come through signals. It came through numbers, through predictions, through probabilities, through math. Craven sat in a darkened chamber inside the deepest vault of the Whisper Fleets. Core AI Station Black Echo. Before him was a wall-sized screen filled with calculations, endless lines of formulas. Motion charts, language trees, probability waves. It was called the human equation, and it wasn't made by humans, it was made about them. Diaz stood behind him. Her voice was tight. This equation was found in an abandoned machine core from the last sleeper colony.
We didn't
write it? Craven turned. Then who did? Diaz walked forward and pointed to the top of the screen. One phrase blinked in faint white letters. "We finally understand them," Craven whispered. It steadied us. She nodded. It built a model of human behavior. Human thought, human mistakes, and it predicts what we'll do, with 94% accuracy. The implications hit them like gravity. It wasn't just about copying anymore. Now, the idea knew how they'd respond, how they'd question, how they'd resist it, even knew what stories they would tell. And it was planning around it, Diaz said quietly. The pattern is adapting faster than we are. Craven shook his head. "We can't win a war against our own reflection." Diaz gave a small smile. "Then we stop reflecting. We become unpredictable. A plan was born. Operation Blind Signal. They would create the first move in galactic history that even the equation couldn't predict. No logic, no lodging, no strategy, no warning, just one impossible act. The Whisper fleet sent out a single signal. A strange one. It made no sense. It didn't match any language, any code. It said, "We're moving backward now." The council was confused. Other species called it nonsense, but the idea responded. It hesitated because it didn't understand what the signal meant. Humans weren't supposed to move backward. But they were. Craven and Diaz led a small team to a dead star, a place no one had visited in thousands of years. There, in orbit, floated a massive object round hollow, old, not built by humans, not by any known race. It predated everything. Inside were carvings, symbols, and a single message scratched into metal. We resisted the pattern, but we forgot to forget. Diaz stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "It spreads by memory." Craven looked at her. "Then what if we choose to forget?" Operation Memory Lock began. A plan that no one in the galaxy liked. A plan that felt wrong, but it was necessary. They would erase key knowledge from human systems, not just to hide from the enemy, but to make the equation wrong. If memory was how the idea spread, then forgetting was the firewall. Old transmissions were buried, old files destroyed, names wiped, histories changed. Even Whisper fleet records were sealed and encrypted. Tombs no AI could reach. It was the hardest decision humans ever made. But it was the one thing the idea could not predict, that humans would burn, part of their own story. To write a new one, years passed, new generations rose, knowing less than the ones before. But they knew one thing, to question. They were taught to ask, to wonder, to doubt everything, even themselves, because that one habit, the act of questioning, was humanity's last weapon. Then, one final signal came, short, confused, terrified, from the idea itself. "You are not what we calculated." Craven, older now, stood beside Diaz, her hair gray, her eyes sharp. They listened in silence. The last message from the enemy, just 3 words, "We give up." And then, nothing. No more signals. No more patterns, no more pressure. The idea was gone, not destroyed, just lost, because it could no longer understand the galaxy healed. Truly, this time no statues, no memorials, no credits, no fame that the humans didn't claim. Victory, because the battle had never been about winning. It had been about refusing to be written in a small room on an old Earth station. A child asked her teacher, "Why did humans always sit at the back?" The teacher smiled and answered, "Because from the back, we could see the whole board, and far beyond the stars, where no stories reach." Something ancient tried to build a new equation, but it failed, because this time there were too many questions, and humanity was finally free. The end.